does work. I'll sit back, sorry, apologies. Thank you for being here for a very prompt start. I appreciate that. We've also got Councillor Fulton on remote attendance. So, Councillor Fulton, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So I will take the apologies first, and we've got apologies from Councillors Matheson and Rutledge. So I'm looking for a mover for that. Thank you, Councillor McGurk, seconded by the Mayor. I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. The order of business is on the agenda. Don't think there's any differences. I need to request if there's any interest in any items on this agenda. None recorded. If you decide that there is as we go along, just let me know. There is no public forum. We've got a couple of staff in the seats watching, so that's awesome. Confirmation of the minutes, so go to pages 7 to 15. A meeting of the 28th of November. I would be looking for a mover to, yes, Councillor McGurk, seconded Councillor Norrie. I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Status report, page 16. We've still got the Waka Landing site, which we haven't got any staff here. Mr. Ward, do you want to talk to that one?
So through you, Madam Chair, this project is a significant project. It has taken some time to get the approvals processes in place, but we're now pleased to announce that the contract for installation has now been signed with the artist after significant negotiations, and fabrication has commenced, and installation is anticipated in this financial year.
Right, so the June 2018 should look fine.
That's correct, yes.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions on the status report? Mr. Ward, did you want to make any comments on the other two items that are ongoing, or are you happy with those?
If I may just briefly on the third item, the Nelson Festivals Trust deed, we have been, the panel have been interviewing this past 7 days. Very strong calibre of people who have put themselves forward. I'm looking in a bid to move the process along to bring a report to one of the next two council meetings in order to get the council appointees. The committee will remember that the council has the right to appoint 2 trustees to that trust, and the chair has indicated that he is keen to progress that as quickly as possible so that the trust can get down to business, and so I'll be looking to bring a report back to council for those appointments as soon as I can.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Councillor Courtney and myself were on that selection panel, and we were blown away with the calibre of the people. Of course, I cannot mention who, because there's still a process, and we hope that they will, the ones that are selected will actually be able to continue with the commitments once they're aware of the commitments more fully. No, fantastic, and as Mr. Ward said, we want to keep the process moving because they're keen to get going, and we want that momentum to carry on. Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question, really. The interviews that you and the Deputy have done, is that for the council appointees on the Trust Board? Because I did see an advertisement in the local rag calling for trustees for the Trust Assists. So yes. There are basically 2 parallel processes going on.
Yes, that is exactly what we've been doing. Correct? So we actually interviewed the whole lot, and then Councillor Courtney and myself identified the 2 that we would recommend to council as the council appointees. It's then up to the chair to appoint the balance. But the thing is, it's quite different because we're appointing a whole board in one stage, but it's very different from just appointing someone to an existing board and identifying the skills or the talents that they may have and putting that, filling in the gap. It's actually forming a whole board and all the interactions and the personalities and the skills. So it was a fascinating. Councillor Courtney might want to, I'm sure he will comment, but we had a fantastic time interviewing. So, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I found them of very high quality.
We interviewed 8 on Monday, no, 6 on Monday. Was it 6 on Monday?
No, Friday. 2 yesterday.
Oh, yes, last Friday, that's right. 6, yes, that's right, last Friday, and 2 on yesterday, Wednesday. And as the Chair said, they were of very high calibre. I know there were some around the table that were wondering whether people would put themselves forward for this job in a voluntary capacity, but we've got the highest of calibre came forward. Well, that was the ones we saw. I don't know whether there was another list that...
We interviewed the shortlist.
So you can rest assured that they are top people, passionate about the arts, but also have their feet on the ground and prepared to challenge and ask questions if required. Sometimes it's good to have people like that on a trust, I would suggest, where they just don't go along with one all passion and all stepping in the same step, but are in fact able to not be antagonistic, but just challenge when appropriate decisions and say, well, let's stop and have another look. And we've got a good cross-section, haven't we?
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fulton, have you got any queries on the status report?
No.
Right, thank you. Councillor Barker?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm wondering if in the intervening 3 months since the decision to grant a lease to the men's shed at Haven Road and the release of funds for that, if we could have an update and how's the men's shed going? Is it up and running?
Mr Ward.
Councillor, that's not an item that's on this agenda and I can't talk about it at this stage. I'm happy to circulate an update outside of the meeting.
Thank you. I'd like a mover for the status report receipt. Well, you're not on the committee. I'm looking at you. Councillor Laurie, thank you. Councillor McGurk. I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. The Chairperson's report, page 19. I've sort of basically set out the things that I've been doing since our last meeting, which, as I said, it's 12 weeks ago, which seems like a long time, but we did get an awful lot of work done last year in this committee, so a lot of it that's reflected in the status report and the low number of items that are there, that most of the items that we've dealt with have been completed. I have said in there that I went to the Nayland Primary School with a librarian, and I'd have to say that was a highlight of my whole time as a councillor. I thought that was just a fantastic opportunity. So we do get the, it's those sorts of on the ground things that I really enjoy, and the children were just amazing. So that was a real highlight for me. Are there any questions on my report? Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was interested to read about the reopening of the Nellie Nightingale Library, and I note that Councillor Barker prepared a video presentation, and I was just curious to learn more about the video presentation. Good idea.
Thank you. Councillor Barker wasn't able to attend, so he did a video presentation which we watched, so Councillor Barker may like to comment.
I did a video presentation, not as a councillor, but as the chairman of the Nightingale Guardians, and it would serve the purpose of giving, for those who were there, an appreciation of the history of what had been happening at the Nightingale Library, how it commenced, where it came from, who funded it, and what had happened to the funds over the period, and what the future was going to be. So it was, I was speaking as chairman of the group that fought very hard to have that library retained as a very well-loved and well-respected part of the Tuna community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is it available on YouTube?
I would have to ask Councillor Barker.
Only if it is, I'll just,
I'm sure he could get a link to you.
I've got it somewhere on a what do you call them, those little...
Look, I'm sure Councillor Barker could give.
I'm not a great YouTube user or a Facebook user, but it is possible.
I'm sure that can be made available. Thank you. I'm looking for Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just looking at your third paragraph about the antisocial behaviour at Stoke Library, I was a bit concerned about those comments, and I too have also been contacted by people about a similar issue. I appreciate that there is a role for council to look after our staff and make sure that they are looked after and that our asset out there is protected and maintained. But I think there's probably a case here. This is a role for a wide range of government organisations, non-government organisations, schools, people who are working with youth, community groups, members to actually address the wider issue. So I look forward to some progress in that. I'm just a bit concerned that, well, my concern is that we are dealing with a symptom in a rather narrow way when in fact it's part of a wider problem out there. So just highlight that. Thank you for raising the issue, but I think it's a case that I don't think the council needs to take this one on all by themselves. There's a lot of people out there, a lot of organisations out there that can help us.
Thank you, Councillor. We certainly will be working with agencies, and what we've done as a start, as was reported in one of the newspapers. There are plenty of agencies that can take on that work. I think some of what we need to be looking at is in the long-term plan with what we're going to do out in Stoke for the youth, and I think we need to actually press that on and not let it lag, because the sooner the better. Councillor Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and if I could just perhaps comment on that item. I think the issues highlighted by Councillor McGurk are extremely pertinent, and what I would say is that that work's already begun. So I'm aware of the agencies that have already come together, working alongside council and making sure that we are dealing with actually a range of symptoms. So some of them have been transient symptoms that are no longer there, and some of them are more deep-seated issues that I think are going to be progressed over this next few years in a very positive way for Stoke. We want to make sure that young people in Stoke have their wellbeing addressed, and I think that's been a focus very much for Mr Ward and for the Chair.
Thank you. I'm just going to check with Councillor Fulton whether you have any questions on the Chairperson's report.
Through the Chair, no, I don't.
Thank you. I'm looking for someone to move then. My Deputy, Councillor Fulton, Councillor Courtney. Councillor McGurk, thank you. I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. We're now moving on to item 8, which is the Green Meadows Centre referral of delegation, and I'll ask Mr Ward to explain what this document is for.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we continue to progress the work on the Green Meadows Centre, a number of risk items have arisen which could impact on the project. Unfortunately, the capital projects team were largely out of the office due to the emergency events and the rainfall, and continue to work in the emergency operations centre, and so this request is to get the matter dealt with in a timely way, is to refer the matter back up to council for a decision at council.
Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Does this delegation remain with council, or is it intended to revert back to this committee?
So the recommendation is very specific to the council meeting of the 20th of March. So it's just items that have to be taken up then. The council will then have to make a decision as to whether it wants to retain oversight or is happy for the delegation to pass back to the Community Services Committee. But if it's silent, it would pass back to the Community Services Committee.
Is that something, just follow, is that something that will be in the report that comes to council on the 20th?
Yes, we'll cover that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking for a mover for this then. Thank you, Councillor McGurk. Seconded by the Mayor. I'll put that recommendation and the recommendation to council. You're happy with those both? Councillor McGurk, both? Happy with both? Thank you, I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 9, the Community Services Report. This is the quarterly report, so again I'll be handing to Mr Ward for his input.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it seems an awfully long time ago, but this is the report for the second quarter of the financial year up until the end of December. It's an opportunity for the committee just to get some visibility on some of the good work that's happening that may be slightly out of sight because there have been no issues with them. And it reflects some of the business as usual in some of our activities, particularly in the libraries. So the intention is to build on this report every quarter to give the committee a picture, both in terms of usage of our facilities and of our library, but also to build on the work that is taking place in those business units. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I would note there is one attachment, and you've been given a larger copy. This piece of work, Strengthening Community Governance in Nelson and Tasman, as you can see from the front page there, has been a collaboration between Council, Volunteer Nelson and the Rata Foundation. And this was really out of this committee's desire to see the agencies working in the community more closely together. I've been attending a strategic funders meeting on a quarterly basis for the last 2 or 3 years, which is aimed at trying to build, to identify those areas within our community where some collaborative work could happen. And we've done some work around the grants process to try and streamline those processes. But there was also a strong message that governance of community organisations was an issue for the funders generally, and this stream of work came out of that desire to see some improvements in that area. This is the first report, which is a bit of a stock take. Since then, there's been a second group set up with representatives from the different community organisations to keep this project alive and to promote good governance across our community organisations. So it really was something that was driven by Council's desire to be collaborative, but the opportunities from working with RATA in particular to identify community needs and address those needs.
Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Mr Ward. I'm a little concerned, I don't want to be, but I am a little, regarding 4.8. That's the library statistics there. There's a fall of about 14,000 on the door count. How do they do that door count? And is the drop of 14,000 primarily to do with the Nellie Nightingale closure between October and November?
So through the chair, there are counters on the door as you go in. I think there were two things at play here. One was that Nightingale Memorial Library was closed for a period of this time, but also just looking back at that period, October to December 2016, that was when we saw an incredible influx of freedom campers into our city. And we had made provision for them to stay in Ackerson Street, but also in Rutherford Park. And so I believe a lot of the casual visitors at that time would have been down to the freedom campers. And I think the fact that the issues has remained fairly constant, that probably reflects that it was probably casual people rather than people borrowers of the library that were using it at that time.
Can I just follow on through you, Madam Chair? Will we see that dissipate now that we're getting Wi-Fi throughout the city and almost total coverage of the CBD? Do you see a decline in the gathering at the library because of that access to greater access to Wi-Fi? I'm even thinking of people coming off a plane. They can get a Vodafone card, can't they, for $20 and get their access for the whole time they're there, just about, from the airport.
So if I just refer Councillor across the page to the top of page 24, what we've seen actually is our Wi-Fi sessions over that period have trebled. So there is certainly, I think there's, and that is a result of the Wi-Fi at the library being extended to be part of the citywide coverage. I think people will always look at the library as a centre for knowledge and for doing for working there. And the challenge that I've laid down to the library staff is actually how do we leverage off that, provide relevant programmes for people to be digitally connected. So I think we will see growing Wi-Fi use across the city as we've made free Wi-Fi available, but I don't think we will see a decline in the use of the library. I think actually we'll see an increase as we leverage off those programmes.
Thank you. Councillor Laurie.
Thank you. Just in regards to the report about governance, it often strikes me that in a town this big, there's a huge amount of governance going on, and there are a lot of trusts and their school boards of trustees and a lot of things like this. Every community group seems to have a board and a trust, and I just wondered whether some of the feedback to the work was that, you know, we're kind of over-governed, that there's too much of this sort of thing going on, and it actually makes it really difficult for some groups to just get on with the job.
You got a question? I'm just not sure what you want.
Yeah, the question was, did you get any of that sort of feedback?
So through the chair, I've had that feedback consistently from a number of sources over the past number of years. There's a challenge in the way the groups are funded, and typically they will get funding for projects but not for core operational, and we've sought to address that through our community investment fund. But when you're set up to project fund, it means that new projects and therefore new groups get established in order to access funds, and I think that's to the detriment of actually building some resilience within the community groups themselves. But it is a challenge, and you know, everyone is very well intentioned in terms of their participation in groups. They want to promote their area of interest. Sometimes, however, the funding mechanisms have perverse outcomes in actually creating more groups rather than building existing ones.
Thank you. Through the chair, that's the impression I've had as well. Is there any kind of change of direction in the sector to something that perhaps might be a bit more practical?
So I think there, so through the chair, I think there will be, there are small steps being made, partly driven by our own funding. So we have made it clear through our community investment funding that we will fund core costs where it's around the delivery of outcomes to the community. And I think that's been a good step forward. We have had conversations with the other funders around how we can shift the model of funding to building resilience rather than building more community groups, and that's an ongoing discussion. But it's not something that can happen quickly because different groups have different objectives, and trying to line them up is challenging. I think there is a third strand which is social enterprise. So if the funding model is moved away from grant funding for all activities towards actually building some social enterprise and getting some business disciplines into, and it doesn't work for all sectors of the community, but for some sectors, I believe that is a stronger model moving forward, and there's some evidence from overseas that is the case.
Thank you. Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Mr. Ward. I wanted to touch on a couple of items, 6.1, which is Green Meadows, and I know, Madam Chair, you told me it wasn't for this meeting, but I want to test my sources. I rang around. I understand that the leases are all in place now. Is that for the Green Meadows? Are you of that view, or have I been misinformed?
That is correct. All the leases with anchor tenants have been signed off this week.
Well, that's very good news, because there was apprehension around the table that they weren't in place, and then I gleaned the information that they are, so they're there. So that's great news. The other one, I don't know how you feel about this, and I haven't discussed it with the chair, but it's 6.7 to do with these community halls and at Stoke and Trafalgar. Where is the Trafalgar Centre in that? Because I think it would be helpful to know exactly the usage there.
So through the chair, Trafalgar Centre, there is a report on Trafalgar Centre being prepared, and that will go to the Sports and Recreation Committee. It sits under that committee's delegation.
So we can't have it on this report at all, you know, it'll come separately to another.
It will come separately through Sports and Rec.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you. A question about the Green Meadows Centre leases. Has RSA got a signed lease?
No, RSA is not one of the core anchor tenants that we've been working through. We have had conversations with RSA. They have indicated that they do not wish to take a lease with council and are pursuing an arrangement with Stoke Rugby Club.
So that means that they could still use it, but not through council. They'll have a sublease from the rugby club. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's not around a sublease. It's around any group can use the Green Meadows Centre if they make a booking, and the RSA have indicated that they will make occasional bookings, but didn't want to commit to long-term lease arrangements. So they will pay the community rate for use of the centre.
Okay, it will be interesting to see how that transpires. And Section 6.7, Trafalgar Pavilion, if that is what I'm thinking it is, the new area in the north end of the Trafalgar Centre, it's not.
No, that'll be the Trafalgar Pavilions at Trafalgar Park.
All right, okay.
Again, anything to do with the Trafalgar Centre is not in this committee, it's a separate...
Even the reception area, which is not a really sport and rec type area?
It's the building.
It's the building and the fact that it's in the park reserve.
Youth Councillor Emma.
Just throughout the document, the attached document on governance, it mentions youth a lot that are needed on these boards, especially for our tech skills. And I was just wondering, is there a plan on how to address this need and get youth more involved?
So through the chair, thank you for that question. As part of our youth strategy and the implementation of the youth strategy is around, rather than doing things for young people, is around empowering young people to participate is very much a focus of a youth strategy. So I would hope that in combination with both RATA and Volunteer Nelson pushing this message, look, I think youth should be involved, not just for the tech skills, but also because much of what the community groups do are going to impact them and the services they have in the future. So it's absolutely key for me that the youth engage, gain governance experience, and I would encourage all members of the Youth Council who have experience of governance at the Youth Council level to put themselves forward and volunteer for these groups, because I think you've got a lot of value to add.
I'm just going to add to that. Emma, very good question, because when I've been out and about with community groups, particularly with boards, they are looking at ways of attracting young people to the board, whether it's a full board member with all of the responsibilities that come with it, or whether to get them in to get their view on a specific project or something that they are doing. So it is something that is new that I've heard recently, that and other groups of people and cultures in the city, to try and get them in to get their views on different facilities and different boards that are working in the community. So it's actually something quite new at the moment, so it'll be interesting to see how that develops, but there's certainly the conversation at the moment about it. I'd have to say that this document is an incredible piece of information and an awesome start to some work that's happening. I went to the opening, as did Mr. Ward, and it was a very good method of getting different community groups with boards and governance models together in one place. And it was, prior to that, several people went out and participated, I can't remember, it was 18 or 20 boards around the Nelson area with a whole lot of questions about all sorts of things regarding, and this covers governance and management. And if you read this document, I'm still picking it up, reading different things, and I've read it and I keep going back and finding things in there. It's very helpful. But I guess the key thing was that it highlighted there are a lot of people who volunteer, but they don't actually have governance skills. They want to do the job and they want to learn more to help where they are. And it seems that there are a few people that are quite good at governance and they get picked for all the boards. And that's another problem that's come out through this. It shows that there are a few people doing a lot of work. So this is to help build the skills around boards so that they can actually go out and help others. And there's a bit of mentoring going on as well. There are some boards that are very highly efficient and to the point where they're actually happy to go and mentor others in different areas. And you'll read in here where the management say the governance cross over quite a lot and they don't know where they need to start and stop. So I think it's a common problem around around not-for-profits and voluntary organisations. So I think this is an awesome start to some education for people doing governance work, and I think it's only going to be a huge benefit. So I'd like to thank the staff for doing that, and we've got Mark Preston Thomas here today, and he's our new, shall I say, Shanine. So I know he doesn't look like Shanine, but he's in her chair. So welcome Mark. So I'm not going to put you in the hot seat because I know this sits in community partnerships and you're quite new and it would be mean for me to get you down here, but if you would like to, when you go back, tell them that we're very positive about this document and we're really looking forward to some more reporting back as to how those groups that have put their hand up to help others, how that actually is working.
Just comment, Madam Chair, on what you just said about there's people who want to be on boards but they don't have the skills. I think it's worth pointing out, and it goes back to a point I was making earlier, there are a lot of people who don't want to be on boards, but they're serving on boards because they feel if they don't, the cause that they're involved in that they believe in will fall over. And I think that highlights a problem with our system, that people are feeling that way, because I don't really see how it's sustainable long term. So I just wanted to make that point.
And that is an awesome point and right on it. And the thing about this program is that they can make contact with our staff in particular, who can then connect them into the right places. And our staff are very good at connecting. So if you know of people that are on boards that maybe would like to learn more skills or talk to others in similar roles on other boards, just to help them out, that can happen. So we should be using those connectors. The Mayor.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I'm really pleased to see this piece of work come forward, and it's been, the process of going through it actually has, I think, already strengthened the voluntary sector. But I would just want to pick up on Emma's question and comment before around the so I just wanted to pick up on Emma's comment before in questions around younger people participating in governance roles, and I would really like to see quite an initiative in our city, so picking up off our youth strategy to find opportunities for younger people to be sitting at the board table, because one of the things that I'm conscious of is that if there's a concern about sustainability of organisations, that can often be because there isn't some succession planning about how organisation has changed over time. And if people sitting at the table are all of a particular age, then the tendency is that sometimes that organisation just won't appeal to younger people. You put younger people into governance roles and the perspective changes on where organisations will go, and the ability for relevance in our community is, in my view, highlighted. So I've seen some really good work coming through from Sports New Zealand. I think Councillor Skinner will have seen that as well, and Sport Tasman, really focusing on moving younger people into governance roles around sports clubs and how that changes the offering and increases our participation and membership rates. So if you want a strong organisation, your board table needs to reflect your community. It's a little bit like local government. It's a challenge for us to get this board table to reflect our community. One of the things that we do is we have our youth councillors sitting at the board table. So all power to getting those connections, because I think that will address potentially some of the sustainability issues that Councillor Laurie's talking about.
Thank you. I think it would be good if for the next round or the next iteration of this, or whatever format it takes, that we actually incorporate that specifically, that we encourage, so if that could be in the minutes, that we actually would actively like to see the encouragement of young people to those roles, those higher roles on boards, and how that might happen. Councillor Fulton, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I don't have any questions, just a brief comment. I think this report is fantastic. It's very timely. I think that issues Councillor Laurie's raised are valid, and I think it's really important to be mindful that we want organisations to be successful, so we don't want that barrier of the complication of boards to stop success. But I think this is a great piece of work, and well done to the staff. It's really nicely presented.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm going to look for a mover of item 9. Oh, sorry. Apologies.
Yeah,
Councillor
just a comment.
I'd be happy to move it on.
Yeah, I'll defer to Councillor Fulton. One of the things that does come through the report, and a variation of the theme from Councillor Laurie, is developing clusters of like-minded organisation. It does sort of raise the possibility of the concept of a community hub, a community house, for example, where there are some synergies being gained with a lot of like-minded organisations or groups of organisations actually share assets and resources. So, it's a bold direction, but there is an opportunity, I think, to start thinking about how we can sort of recreate an organisation where organisations with part-time can actually have access to a hub of facilities, support, the sharing, the networking in a single area. So I think it's something that's maybe thought for the future about a direction we want to go, and I would actually sort of heartily endorse the idea of some kind of community house or community organisation house where these groups can be located.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm just checking. Councillor Fulton has moved. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor McGurk, thank you. Solid, Mr. Goodman. I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you.
Aye.
Item 10, the Youth Council update. Who's first? Youth Councillor Emma.
So, in front of you, you should have a copy of our 2017 Plan of Action, or KPIs. So in 2017, we didn't have Rach, our coordinator for the year, and had Steve Stiles take her place. So we had lots of new and fresh ideas, and as seen on our KPIs, we covered a large range of different projects that would benefit for youth in different ways, whether it's submissions or a big event. So an important part of what we did last year was our 6 submissions, which went beyond the minimum of 2 that we had planned. And 2 of the ones that we thought were very important were the annual plan and Draft National Suicide Prevention Strategy, as one was local and one was national. So it was bringing youth voice everywhere, which was really good to also connect and see what youth wanted. Then there were our 3 main projects throughout the year, were the skate park project, Youth Week project, and an elections event. So all 3 of those, we were able to really connect with youth face to face and get out there, and also get them to come to our events and either get them involved in national or local politics. So skate park, it was a design competition, so we went out and we advertised it to primary schools, intermediate, and secondary schools, which is amazing. And Youth Week, we had a Facebook series, which, as you may remember, we had photos of youth and then a little blurb of what I would like the Nelson City councillors to know. So that, we got a lot of attention from that and many views, which is amazing to get youth kind of to recognize that there is a council, they have councillors, and they also want to know what we have to say. And with the elections event, I believe we had around 100 people come, which was amazing to get them involved. Some of them learned how to vote if they were 18, and if not, it gets them prepared for when they can vote. So we did accomplish a lot, and if you have any questions, please ask them. But first, I'll let Alice speak about what we're planning for this year.
So we've had 2 meetings so far, and we've got 16 new councillors and 4 returning councillors. We've had all these councillors introduce them on our Facebook page, so the community knows who to contact. So far, we've been discussing ideas and opportunities we want to be a part of for this year, and we are thinking about doing an event with Age Connect. We've had a few meetings so far, but we're just really planning out how we want to be a part of this. And we've also got a Facebook heritage sort of series coming up. So we've got a member from the a youth member from the Tasman region, who is showing an item or a place in Nelson that they connect with, and it has a historical meaning behind it.
Thank you. You're always busy, aren't you? You have regular meetings, you have monthly meetings, don't you? Yes. You do get a lot done. Thank you very much. We don't have to receive anything, do we? We're just verbal.
I think Emma was inviting questions.
Right. Any questions of the Youth Councillor's report? Any comments?
I'll have one for Emma.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, through you to Emma, can you flesh out for us a little bit, perhaps it's early for you to do this, but the Age Connect project, what are you envisaging there?
We haven't really got a set plan yet. We've only had 2 meetings so far discussing having an event. We were thinking of doing an event where we're connecting the younger, the youth with an older generation, and sort of doing maybe like a speed dating, sort of getting the 2 different ages to connect with one another. But we haven't really got anything set in stone yet, so we're just still discussing.
Yes, do.
And the other comment, the other one I'd like, you and I are interested in heritage, aren't we?
We are interested in
very, very interested in heritage, and Nelson has a wonderful heritage, so you need to tell us about something about that anyway, the Facebook Heritage project you're looking at.
Yeah, so in previous years for the Heritage Week, we have done a photo competition, exhibitions, and we decided this year to try something new after the success of our Youth Week Facebook series, to do something similar where we do get roughly maybe 12 youth, again a photo, and a little blurb about why they connect to the specific place or item that relates to heritage in Nelson. And also our plan for that, we are thinking of putting together a map where all of these items or places are shown so that people, especially youth, can go out and visit all of them to hopefully get, especially youth, more involved in heritage and understanding that heritage is for everyone.
If there's anything that you need in the heritage, I suggest, I'm sure you'd be happy for them to email you and get some assistance.
I'm trying to bring to mind a quote from Sir Winston Churchill. He said, "A nation that forgets its history has no future." So you want to...
He'll be a lot of help, but Councillor Courtney will be very helpful. I'm going to be moving now into public excluded, I believe. Is that correct? So before we move into public excluded, I'm going to say to the girls that you might want to wait outside for a short time, because there is not a lot of business to and then we would like you back, if that's all right. Thank you. So I need a mover to go into public excluded. Councillor Laurie, a seconder. Councillor McGurk. I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Right. Thank you.